Okay, so let's get started, guys. So can I show you guys something absolutely crazy? Okay, so uh, if you guys are kind of new here, um, in the last kind of 33 months, for me personally, I passed all my courses. So on the first try, except C3. I passed C1 in 5 days, and that was with an 89%. So that was awesome. I passed course 4 in 12 days with 92%. I was trying to get the picture for you guys, but Humber was down today for some reason, so I wasn't able to. And I passed Sims 2 with a 96% as well. Okay. And with all of these stuff, I mean, since then, I have become a realtor. So that's since 2021. I'm working part-time right now. I grew the Facebook group to 5,000 or so members. So many of you guys are from there. So hello again, if you guys have seen me before. And I've tutored almost 500 or so people with a pretty good pass rate, which is really nice. And all of this is not just to brag or for whatever reason. This is just to say that whatever I've been doing is based on having read over like 5,000 pages of real estate content, like a lot. I've done it myself when I had to do the courses, and then now that I'm teaching so many people, I have to go through it again and again and again. And so that's based on a lot of hours of reading stuff. That's also based on about 10,000 or so hours spent just kind of going through materials, going through courses, and of course, creating a bunch of these stuff for you guys if you guys have been around the scene a little bit. So creating the checklist, I used to do the Q&As, doing the making the notes for you guys, some videos. So in the last kind of 33 months, all of this I want just to show you guys. I start with this just to show you guys that what I'm going to show you guys today actually works. Okay, these are not stuff that I've kind of randomly guessed about and I'm just trying to sell you guys something. Okay, these are stuff that I've actually done myself, that I've actually helped people with. And there's a lot of people in the industry who you guys might have even bought stuff from or you watch the videos who don't actually know what they're talking about. Okay, and they haven't done the course. A lot of people that make the kind of content similar to the way I do, they haven't even done it with Humber. Uh, and so this is just a preface. Make sure you kind of look out who you're kind of following. Okay. And so after all of these courses, after doing all of these stuff, after doing all of this reading materials and all of these things as well, um, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also learned a few things that kind of taught me kind of what was the right thing to do. Okay, so I've been able to learn a few things in terms of what works, what doesn't, and that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. So I'm going to give you guys basically the 3+ years, 10,000 hours. I'm going to try and condense it for you guys today, and of course we have the next session on Friday. If you guys come to that as well, um, and yeah, hopefully you guys don't make the same mistakes as I did. Okay, so all good? Just give me thumbs up if we're all good so far. Yes, yes, okay. All right. So 6 things that we're going to cover today is 1, we're going to look at how do we pass on the first try? Obviously, that is the most important thing for everybody. Second, how do we pass in 3 weeks or less? Okay. And then third, we're going to look at the entire offer process, so the APS. Fourth, the entire mortgage financing process. So kind of what is all the things involved in the financing process, the GDS, the TDS, and of course, we're going to look at a few different default options, everything that you guys might have already reviewed. The condominium breakdown, so the basics for condominiums, the confusing terms, how does it run, how is it maintained, how do we actually start one? And we're going to start with these first 2 at the top. Okay, so for today, we're actually going to do the first 3 points. So these 3 over here that you guys see, that's the first 3 things we're going to do. Next class, we're going to do these 2 at the bottom. And so, if you guys are coming on Friday, then you guys will get the whole thing. And of course, like I said, I'm going to be sending you guys a recording anyways. Okay, so first thing, before I kind of jump into anything, I just want to break a few of the common misconceptions with the real estate course. And that is that passing your exam, it does not have to take months. Okay. It is not hard and it does not have to be stressful. Okay. Now, keep in mind, over here I said it does not have to take months, does not have to be stressful. And I said it is not hard, meaning some people make it a lot longer than it needs to be. Some people make it more stressful than it needs to be. And the courses, in reality, if you really look at them, and this is based on my experience, they're not actually that difficult. Okay. And this is my experience tutoring people from all kinds of ages, all kinds of backgrounds. And a lot of people pass the courses once they kind of figure out the exact strategies and things that they need to do. And so just to give you guys a preface, kind of like to push your guys' boundaries a little bit, the students that I tutor usually, and these are some of the techniques I'm going to give with you guys today. So these students, they only study 1 to 2 hours a day. They only do like 200 practice questions in total before the exam. So I know many of you guys have passed it or other things like that. They're not even doing that. Only 200 or less. And they usually pass their exams in 3 weeks. So it's not taking them 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks or, a few months. And I know for those of you guys on the beast, I know it seems like it's never going to end. It's like really, really long, right? And so the first thing I'm going to look at, what are the habits of the actual top performing students I've had? Okay, so what are the things that you guys can replicate so that you guys can actually apply this today and you can actually, speed up your course? So first thing is they're highly motivated. I'm going to break that down in a second. Second is they're highly practical. So they're very looking for actionable, tangible things they can do to improve the score. And they have healthy stress. And that's something I'm going to cover in a second as well. So for the first part, highly motivated. The highly motivated people, they are motivated by money, passion, or personal situations. Right? That's very simple. They are also willing to do whatever it takes to pass. And the question I want you guys to ask yourself at this point is, how motivated are you personally? And what are you motivated by? Okay. From my experience, the people that are passion motivated, are motivated by their passion to do real estate, those people generally perform better on the exams. And they have a lot less stress. And that's not to say that if you're motivated by these other things, you're not going to pass the courses. You totally will. And you totally can. But you have to adopt some of the same mindsets that they do naturally. Okay. Because the passion motivated people, the people who love real estate, who watch Selling Sunset on Netflix, who really want to do this as a career, these are people who see this as like a kind of goal, like something fun that they really want to get to and do. And what makes them super high performing is they are very naturally engaged. When I say naturally engaged, I mean they're not people that you have to shove to get to study. They're not people you have to constantly poke. Hey, did you study today? Did you not study? They're people that are self-starters because they love real estate, right? They want to do this. And I found a lot of people that are motivated by these other things a lot harder to do that. Okay. So first thing for you guys is you want to ask yourself, how motivated are you? And what can you look at in your situation that can motivate you more? Okay. And it's also very important I address one thing. Negative motivation is not as helpful. Negative motivation, meaning there's a lot of people who do the exams and their goal is to not fail, which is like they failed the exam one time, they're scared of failing the next time. And their goal is to not fail the next time. They're so worried about it. And so they're motivated, they're studying, but their mindset is on, oh shit, I'm going to fail again. The problem is when you keep focusing on, oh, I might fail, what ends up happening more often than not is you end up failing. So it's really important that you look upwards. You look towards where you want to actually go, which is obviously the pass. Okay. Second thing, these guys are highly practical. When I say practical, so let me break it down a little bit. First of all, to guarantee a pass on the exam, if I'm going to just guarantee it for you guys right now, you would either have to know 100% of the content by heart, right? You know it from front to the end. Or you'd have to know the exact exam questions, right? Both of these, at least ethically, are not really possible. Okay. So the second best way to pass is you need to obviously retain as much info as possible. Okay. This boils down to two things. One is the quantity. Okay. How many hours are we actually studying? And two is the quality. What is the effectiveness of our study method? Okay. Now, quantity, when I talk about hours studied, a lot of people put in a lot of hours, but if the quality is not there, they overcompensate. So they study more. And you might still pass. That's not a problem. But the same thing goes vice versa. Okay. The more quality your study methods are, the more quality your study materials, the less time you also have to put in as well. Meaning, if I obviously had the exact exam questions, I wouldn't have to study that much, right? I just have to study the questions and I'm good. If you don't have the questions, you're gonna have to study a lot more. Obviously, like I said, we don't have those questions, but we can choose methods and materials that are gonna get us closest to the highest quality materials we can, which is gonna reduce our study time as much as possible. Okay, and this is kind of the point of the group sessions that I do. This is why 3 weeks seems very fast, but it's not actually abnormally fast. This is actually normal, and you guys can do this too. So, finding the sweet spot comes out to three major things that you guys can do right now. Okay, the first is there's three ways to increase your scores automatically without you having to change much, like just a few things. The first is you have to be honest. Okay. Second is you have to change something, and I'll go in detail into that. And third is you have to always self-evaluate. Okay. So being honest. When I say be honest, I mean you have to be honest about where are you right now. I can tell you whenever I get reached out, I get messages or calls from people, and they're like, "Hey Shiva, I'm on this course. Maybe I failed this course. I need some help. I'm struggling, confused. I don't know what to do." Oftentimes, I would say like 95% of the time, the very first thing I ask them is like, "What is the situation? Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? What are the things that you're doing right now? How often are you studying? What are the patterns that we can identify that are causing this to happen?" Because if you don't change anything, you're going to get the same results. And we know people have passed this course before. So we know it's possible. Okay. And you guys have probably seen those crazy posts as well. Some people passing in like a week or 2 weeks, meaning that's possible as well. We just have to look at what are we willing to do and what are we doing wrong. Okay. So a few things to ask yourself. Where am I right now? Be honest. Where are you right now in terms of your studying and your retention of the material? Right? Do you know as much as you need to know? How far are you on the modules? Where do you want to be? What's your timeline? Do you want to take 5 months to pass the course? Do you want to take 2 weeks? Each one demands a different level of study and effectiveness, right? How many hours have you been putting in, honestly? And be honest with this question. A lot of people are not honest about this. Really putting in the hours of study, not on the phone and studying, not cooking and listening to a podcast or the notes read out loud. Or how many hours have you actually been putting in, like fully focused? What study methods or materials have you been using? And even more importantly than that, have they been working? And not, yeah, I feel it's been working. You want to be very results based. What are the results you've been getting? Are you finding after studying, for example, let's say you grab my notes, after studying my notes for a day, are you finding you're remembering some of the information? If you are, then great. But can we remember more? Is there a better material out there that's going to help us remember more of it in a less amount of time? Okay. And you also want to look at the results that you might get on like your MCQ questions. Maybe you're doing passive. Passive gives you a great score number. So you got to use those score numbers. Now you don't want to tie yourself down. If you get a 74 on a passive test, that's not the end of the world. And that doesn't mean that you're failing. You might very well do really well in the exam. So that has no bearing. But you have to be honest about where you are and not kind of what you're feeling. So try to be very results based. Okay. This means you also want to track how many hours you're putting in. You want to track how many questions you're doing. You want to track what modules you've been doing and are you on track. And you want to track kind of the results that you've been getting. Everything has to be written and numbers based. So no kind of up in the air kind of feeling stuff. Okay. Are we all good so far? Okay. So from here, change something. When I say change something, like I said, you can't expect different results doing the same thing. So there's a few things we can change. A few of them you guys can do right now. A few of them are a little bit harder. One is put in more hours. Super simple. Even if you're using a really bad study material, the more hours you put in, the better score you're going to get on the exam. That's pretty simple. The easier way is to change your materials, which means trying other things, or changing your study methods. Now, my recommendation is if you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours studying, then the bottom two tips are probably the best for you, which means can we find better materials out there that maybe have not been working for us? And can we change our study methods? Sometimes the materials are fine. These are okay. Sometimes the study methods are wrong, right? If you're listening to the notes read aloud in your car on your way to work at 6 a.m., chances of you being focused is a little bit lower, right, than if you were really sitting at a desk and studying. So sometimes the materials are fine. That's your study methods. Sometimes the materials are bad and your study methods are fine. You're studying, you're sitting at your desk, you're not distracted, but for some reason, you're not getting the material, or it's not preparing you well, or you're still doing bad on the MCQs. So all of that is based on your evaluation. You have to ask yourself those questions. Now, one thing to keep in mind, only change one thing at a time. After this call, don't go out and change your whole study routine. The problem is we can't evaluate it like that. If you change everything, there's no way we can evaluate what changed and what worked and what didn't, right? Ask yourself the question, pick one thing that you think maybe is the problem, change it, see if that works, see if it doesn't. Okay. If you do this, remember, no one's forcing you to do your exam tomorrow. If you do this studying, it might take a little bit more time initially, but the rest of your exams will go by way faster. And this is why I didn't C1. This is why C1 was so fast for me. It only took 5 days, right? But that was because I was kind of fresh out of like high school. So I knew exactly how I learned. For you guys, if it's been a while, that's okay. But you just got to take a little bit of time. How do you learn best? And then you can streamline from there. Okay. Now, to give you guys something practical to take away, these are some things you can actually do now, which actually work. And these are based on the students that I've tutored. So keeping the same study time every day, that helps a lot. I know it's very simple, but this is something that a lot of people who get high scores, they do. Okay. Second is focus time. They have 0 distractions. Okay. And when I say 0 distractions, I mean like absolutely 0. I know sometimes you guys have kids and you guys have, family members around and dogs. So this is a little bit difficult, but you don't have to have absolutely 100% focus. But remember, the more focus you have, the less likely it is that you're going to do bad on the exam. The more focus you're studying, the higher your exam score is going to be. The less focus you're studying, the lower your exam score is going to be. Okay. And in terms of the actual materials, so a big mistake I still see a lot of people using is they're studying directly from the Humber slides. For those of you guys that have looked at the Humber slides, you guys would have noticed the Humber slides are hundreds of slides and they are confusing, they're repetitive, and it never ends. It takes hours to get through them, right? Even if you're just to click continuously, it takes hours. So using the slides are not the best method. You can use them for sure, and that's the material that's going to be on the exam. But these notes that you might find online, either the notes I give for free, or maybe Minicram or some other stuff, notes are going to be your best friend. Okay, notes summarize the content for you. And I know there are some people that are anxious out there who are worried that they're going to miss something. From my experience, doing this for a long time, the notes are fine. And people do fine with the notes, even like completely disregarding the slides. Okay, so make sure you're using some sort of summarized notes. Next, you want to use practice questions. Practice questions can come in many forms, and you don't have to do thousands. When I did my courses, when I passed C1 in 5 days, and I passed C4 in 12 days, I actually only used the Humber module questions. Those questions that come up randomly in the modules. That's all I used. So some people might need more than others, but remember the notes and questions go together. You don't need thousands of questions, but you do need to understand the material. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. You bypass it, you see the 1,000 questions, and you go question, 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 question. But again, my kind of mantra is focus on the quality, not the quantity. It's not the amount of hours we studied. It's not the amount of questions we did. It's how much did you actually retain. If you do 10 questions, if I ask you about them out loud, you should be able to tell me why those questions had those answers. If you can, then what did we even do in the last hour? Okay, so it's not the amount of questions, it's kind of exactly, what is the quality that you're getting out of it. Okay, effectiveness, not efficiency. So pretty much exactly what I was talking about, which is focus on the quality, not the quantity. All right, last thing. So they're highly motivated, they're highly practical, and they have healthy stress. Healthy stress looks something like a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of worry, but they are not incapacitated. They're not discouraged. They're not depressed. They're ready to do the exam and they're motivated to do it. And they still think they're going to pass. They're just a little bit worried, a little bit nervous. That is healthy stress. If you have stress that outside of that, you have to keep in mind stress comes from this feeling of confusion, this feeling of, I don't know what to do and how I'm going to do next. You're fearing the future or you're fearing the past. You're thinking, oh shit, I didn't do anything for the last 2 weeks and my exam is in 2 days. All of that causes stress. The way to combat stress and make it work in your favor is you have to make a plan. You got to take action immediately. Okay. You have to ask those questions that I gave you guys. Where am I right now? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Right? Be honest with yourself, how many hours you've been putting in, and then look for the patterns. What can I change? What materials can I change? And that's how you're going to combat the stress. You make a plan. And once you have the plan, it's super simple from there. Okay. So use it to drive your action, not to paralyze you. Okay. Now, before we move on, I want to also add one more thing, which is a note about overachievers. So in my sessions that I've done for the last kind of 2 years, there's always, in every single group session or so, there's always one or two people that are overachievers. Meaning if I tell them to do 2 hours of study, they do 3. If I tell them to practice 10 questions, they do 20. If I tell them to, read module 1, they'll read module 1 and 2. The thing about overachievers is they always win. They always win, okay? I've never had an overachiever in my classes that has never not passed the exam. And that's just the nature of overachieving. You're putting in more hours and you're really looking at what am I doing wrong and trying to improve that constantly. So naturally, just because they're putting in more hours and they're looking at the quality, they're increasing their score, exponentially. Every time they study, they're tracking everything. They're looking for what they did wrong. They're taking all my advice. They're asking questions in classes, and they're really, really, really trying to do the best that they can. Okay, working harder, putting more hours, and they're using better stuff. However, they also are always self-evaluating, and this is where it comes in. You have to be honest with yourself. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And they're always doing this. I know I've said this before, but they're doing this at the beginning, in the middle of studying, at the end of the studying, and they're making sure they're on track. If you guys have fell off, maybe you've taken a week off or a month off, or maybe you haven't been studying for a little bit. This is usually the case where you didn't self-evaluate, you fell off because you kind of forgot the goal, or you had too many things coming up and you didn't plan to jump back in. I mean, you said, oh, I have a busy weekend. I'll get back to studying when I get back to it. And you never get back to it, right? I'm not saying they don't have things that come up, but they make the plan. Okay, this weekend is for my family. I'm going to start studying on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then they commit. Okay. So just taking in these things, okay, the things that we looked over. If you do these things, you're automatically going to be in the top 10% of students. Okay. And this is because you're going to eliminate all of the procrastination, the discouragement, the test anxiety that we get, the confusion, the stagnation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things come from not having a plan and not knowing what to do. So if you did not get anything from the last half an hour, the main idea is the way to get back up, the way to get back into it, the way to pass your exam is you got to identify the problem. Okay, make a plan, right? Look for the patterns, and you got to take action immediately, starting today. 10 minutes is better than an hour. 5 minutes is better than, 10 minutes is better than not doing anything at all. And 5 minutes is better than, skipping 5 days of study. Okay?